G'day, it's Charles Mackenzie from Infected Blood Australia. I'm wondering if you could do me a favour and just watch this video from the United Kingdom with me. It goes for about 2 minutes and 40 seconds and it's from ITV and the story is called Infected Blood Inquiry. My husband was given a virus that killed him. If you could watch this and I'll make some comments about the video afterwards.
I'm so grateful to have known such a brilliant man.
It's been 9 years since Paul died, but his family still live with the pain every day.
I miss him hugely, everybody knows.
I just wish I could have had more time to get to know him better.
Bronnie was just 4 when her father was diagnosed with hepatitis C. Paul had unknowingly been given infected blood years earlier after a motorbike crash in which he'd lost a leg. He developed emphysema too, but it was the Hep C treatment, a cocktail of toxic drugs, that changed him completely.
It turned him from great chat to be around to somebody who was just angry all the time, depressed, angry, aggressive. You didn't know what you were coming home to. We lost a huge part of him through that.
Paul persisted with the maximum 2 rounds of treatment, but neither worked, leaving him with terminal liver damage. The virus meant there could be no more children. Preventing infection took over their lives, and the family had to deal with ignorance and stigma.
Children at her school were foul to her, foul. You know, your father's disabled, he's ill, he should be dead, he's got a virus. You know, just really unpleasant, a really hard time.
Sadly, their story is not unique. The infected blood scandal has touched thousands of lives, including hundreds of haemophiliacs given infected blood products during the 1970s and 80s. It's feared many patients may still be undiagnosed, having undergone routine transfusions during the same period. Paul died in 2013, one of nearly 3,000 lives lost.
Somebody gave him a virus that killed him, and through no fault of his own. The inquiry has been hard to be part of, but wonderful to be part of. You're kind of fighting for them and for what they went through.
We can say how it affected us, but we can't really know how it affected him truly in his own mind and how he really felt. So it's a shame he can't speak for himself, but at least we can try and advocate on his behalf, and I hope that we do the best job that we can for him.
Bronnie now works as a clinical negligence lawyer, in part influenced by her father. She and her mother want testing for Hep C to be more widely available and awareness raised so that no one else has to go through the same experience.
And that was the LeBron family in the United Kingdom, and what a lovely family they are. And what a tragic situation losing Paul LeBron, the father and the husband, in that way. Congratulations to the British press for covering it. Now, the Globe had a contaminated blood scandal before the 2000s. People were infected all around the world with viruses like HIV and this deadly hepatitis C virus that killed Paul LeBron. Now, there have been inquiries right around the world, and you can see now there's media in the UK into what the LeBron family have been through and thousands of other British families have been through as a result of contaminated blood. And you heard in that video how the LeBron family were calling on more testing to be done. Well, for basically 30 years, I've called on Australia for the Australian government to call on anyone who is transfused with blood before the 2000s to go and get tested for hepatitis C. Okay, it's really important that that happen. And the Australian government have refused to do that. Okay, and that is to do with the ongoing criminal cover-up over this medical scandal. Fortunately, the cover-up in the UK, remember that contaminated blood is a joint cover-up. It's a joint cover-up of the British government and Australian governments. The British government have been caught out and they're now facing their largest ever legal investigation, the Infected Blood Inquiry. I've been a witness at that inquiry. If you'd like to see my statement, it's published on the Infected Blood Inquiry's website, or you can go to infectedbloodaustralia.com, and on the front page there's a link there to my statement. It's a long read, but it's an important read of what happened here in Australia to tens of thousands of victims of what is Australia's deadliest medical scandal and also our nation's biggest medical cover-up. So you heard in that video about the toxic antiviral hepatitis C drugs that Paul LeBron was given. Now, that is the same scenario for us here in Australia. We had thousands of our contaminated blood victims, people who got hepatitis C from blood transfusions or tainted blood products, ended up being given the same cocktail of drugs that Paul LeBron found so difficult. And basically everyone I've ever interviewed about contaminated blood who was treated with the antiviral drugs like interferon for hepatitis C has said it was just hell on earth. The LeBron family said it was hell on earth. And yet these things kept on being prescribed. And patients who had hepatitis C, not today. Today they have new antiviral treatments that are far less harsh and are far more effective. But 20 years ago and 30 years ago, there were just these very toxic treatments like the interferon treatment that Paul LeBron and so many others had. Now, they wanted to put me on those same treatments, and I was told that I was crazy for saying no to them. I was told that they were perfectly safe. I was told that there may be a few side effects, but nothing much. Well, I intuitively and instinctively knew not to trust. And this is going back years and years. I was very young, and I just felt that no, any medical system that lies about contaminated blood and engages in cover-up and denies that this has taken place, I really don't trust them to be the ones on telling me how to get rid of a virus. So I said no to these cocktail of these drugs. And as I said, I had doctors telling me that I needed to see a psychiatrist. They told me I was crazy. They told me I was killing myself. And quite a lot of other contaminated blood victims thought the same too. They thought that I was literally killing myself. Well, it's 2022, and the virus did not cause the liver cancer or liver cirrhosis that it does to so many in me. And yet I didn't have the antiviral drugs. And yet I still have hepatitis C. I am very keen on natural medicine and another thing called orthomolecular medicine, which I studied, and that is the study or the use of vitamins as medicine in health. And so far, that's kept cancer off my liver. And so far, I'm still alive, although, of course, we've lost 600 people since I began who are former members of our group. So there's no doubting that this virus is very serious and very deadly, this hepatitis C virus. But I'm still here. However, I have my original condition, the bone marrow failure. That was the reason why I needed blood contaminated. Well, I didn't want a contaminated transfusion, but that's why I had a transfusion. I hoped it wouldn't be contaminated. But I still have that same bone marrow disease. I've been unable to get a bone marrow transplant. I still have the hepatitis C virus. And I'm still fighting to get justice for victims of Australia's contaminated blood scandal. Now, you'll see that the British press, and this is ITV, and I'll leave a link if you like to that story in this post, you'll see that they are playing...
I'm so grateful to have
stories about their contaminated blood scandal and giving families a chance to speak up about the loss of loved ones. And it's the same in every other country around the world that had a contaminated blood scandal. But there's one country that will not allow this on the media, and that's Australia. This is Australia's deadliest medical scandal. Tens of thousands of Australians are infected and affected by this scandal. And as I said, I've demanded that the government, and we at Infected Blood Australia have been saying to the government, tell the public, tell everyone who is transfused with blood or had a blood product before the year 2000 to get tested for hepatitis C. And yet the Australian government refuse, and they continue to refuse to investigate or to even help victims. Now, this LeBron family in the UK might very well end up getting compensation, and so they should. But actual victims in the UK have been able to, survivors of contaminated blood, have been able to access financial assistance for 20 years. And it's the same the world over. Again, in Australia, families like this one, if they're Australian and you're a victim of contaminated blood, There's no financial assistance whatsoever. We've had people literally lose their lives through a lack of help. Mates of mine, friends of mine, went to their graves. They gave up. And they just died. They couldn't take the poverty or the lack of help anymore. And that really happened. And I'm really angry about this. And I've got bone marrow failure. I haven't been able to get a bone marrow transplant. I've still got the hepatitis C virus. And I'm nearly 50. And I've been fighting this thing for 30 years, ever since I was young. I've given my whole life to this. I've lost my family over it. Okay? And as a result, the only thing that I continue going for is to bloody end and get justice for Australian families like this one. Okay, the British families of contaminated blood, they get to tell their stories publicly. Our ones do not. We get silenced. Okay, and that's a situation that I'm not going to stomach. So as long as I'm alive, I'll be fighting for contaminated blood, fighting to get justice and help for the Australian victims of what was a global scandal. But because we have a corrupt government that basically never wants to help its own people, here we are 30 years later trying to get the same level of assistance that the British have, the Canadians have, that all these countries have. We need your support. Please go to our bio and please click on the link supporting a Royal Commission of Inquiry into Australia's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood. Thank you for your time today.